Conversations in the QC is sponsored by Accentra Credit Union.
Welcome to our October episode of Real Conversations in the QC. This month, we're discussing redlining to today, focusing on housing and wealth in our neighborhoods. To understand how we got to where we are today, some backstory would be helpful. Tim Simpson sat down with 3rd Ward Alderman and historian Marion McGinnis and talked about the history of redlining in the Quad Cities.
Marion, welcome to Real Conversations in the Quad Cities.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, it's good having you here and things. And I know we had some conversation beforehand, and there's one of the information, a little bit of the information we talked about. I want to get to that. But first, I would like for you to, for those who don't know exactly what redlining is, can you explain that and then also talk about when did redlining show up here in the Quad Cities, specifically in Davenport?
Absolutely. So redlining is a term used to defining different parts of cities and breaking them out into areas that were considered desirable or undesirable for doing loans, for mortgage loans.
Okay.
And so it came about in the 1930s. It was tied to the Great Depression. Things were starting to go south with home mortgages long before the actual crash in 29, but when the stock market crashed, by 1933 there were a tremendous number of people whose home mortgages were underwater. Their houses, the value of houses dropped by like 35% across the country. And so people were struggling to stay in their homes. They couldn't pay their mortgages. And it was such a tremendous number. It was 40 to 50% of people were underwater with their mortgages. So not a few, many people, almost half the people in America who own homes. And so this was starting to impact banks. And it had a very, very deleterious effect on what was happening with banks. And of course, there were bank failures that happened during that time as well. So the federal government, in trying to do something about this, set up something called the Homeowners Loan Corporation, and the Federal Housing Administration was set up the next year. HOLC was set up in 1933, and FHA, which we still have today, was set up in 1934.
Okay.
And what they had to figure out was what they wanted to do was they wanted to sort of take over the mortgages and to take them to stabilize banking. And so what they did is they offered loans to banks, and then they would take over the mortgages, but then they had to decide what kind of money they would loan people. And so they went into, there were 239 American cities where the HOLC, working with local bankers, real estate people, insurance, home insurance people, and their own crews in D.C., this all came out of D.C., looked at American cities, looked at the people who lived in them, what they made, what their income was, and based on that, the risk that was present in each neighborhood or each area of a city, and determine how much would they loan in terms of mortgage to offset the cost. And so it was redlining was the worst color, and so the cities, all of these cities, including Davenport, were color coded. Once they had done all this research, they were color coded, and green meant this is a good positive area. Blue was a stable area. Yellow was considered hazardous or potentially declining, and then red was, it was the worst. So these were places, and so they would then, in the green areas, they would loan, they could loan 70%, they might loan 70% of the value of the mortgage to the banks. In the blue, that was still pretty good. But as you started getting into yellow and you started getting into the red, in some cases, no loans at all. Okay. And one of the things they did when they did this, and these maps were done about 1934, and they were done across the country. After, they stayed in D.C., they were in storage somewhere. They weren't really available, and then they became available only a few years ago. They became digitized. And so people can now look back, and what you can see in these maps is kind of what happened to inner cities. I mean, the impact they had on inner cities in terms of how money was loaned to people to buy houses, and it's very, very telling with impacts today.
So like these maps, and when we had the conversation, we had a chance to sit down before and talk about this, and you really opened my eyes to be able to see some things. But
Right.
with we talked about University of Richmond's mapping inequality, redlining. It's called Redlining and New Deal America Project. Walk us through going to that website.
Right.
I was able to see that, but explain to everybody what's all in there.
Yes, this is available to everybody, and it is really incredible. And I watched I said to you, Tim, let's look at your hometown in 1936, and we went to your hometown, and I saw your eyes because you could go to where you grew up and see what was happening there and look around your city. And so it is called Mapping Inequality. It was the University of Richmond, and there were some other, Virginia Tech, there were a few other schools that assisted, University of Maryland, but it is the University of Richmond that has all of these maps available. And when you open this website, and if you just Google, if anybody's interested, and if any city that you're from, go on this, just Google Mapping Inequality. They can find the website. It'll pop up. It says go to the map, and when you click on it, it's a map of the entire United States with lots of little circles. And then as you zoom in toward the city, then it will bring the map up for that city, and you can go down to detail. But it isn't just the map that's there.
Right.
What's also there is all of the notes that were attached to that map when they did these maps, talking about the different neighborhoods and how much risk they would take and how much they would loan in a neighborhood. And that's where you really see some very disturbing details at times, because they were in the way they talked about different populations, whether it was African American, whether it was Asian, whether it was immigrant populations, and how well, and they characterized neighborhoods by the people who lived in them. And it wasn't just about their income. It wasn't just about income. It was cultural characteristics as well.
So looking, like I said, I was able to go back and look at my hometown, but we're here in Davenport, talking about Davenport. Which neighborhoods in Davenport were most affected with redlining? If someone was to go in there now and look at that.
So what you're going to see is most of the area south of Locust, which was a great deal of the city. McClellan Heights would not be there. Certain areas close to Locust, the Washington Street corridor wouldn't be. It was blue, I think. Some areas around, then as you get just north of Locust, around what is now Vanderveer Park, those areas. But what you see is a lot of red and a lot of yellow, and a lot of red in the around, the whole downtown area. I am in the neighborhoods that we still think of today as our south of Locust neighborhoods that, often investment is more difficult. Davenport, in terms of, they did not have a large population of new European immigrants or Asian immigrants. But when you look at cities that have, you see things like, well, there's a big Asian immigrant, and the houses look good, but because of this immigration, the number of immigrants living here, we're going to rate it lower. And you do see some of that in Davenport in terms of African American population. Davenport did not have in 1900 a very large African American population, and it established itself. Of course, the city was, most of the city in 1900 would have been south of Locust anyway. Okay. But you see that language in the Davenport. Maps as well. I have a neighbor, my good friend Mary Houston, who is 87 now. She'll be 88 next year, and she grew up in Goose Hollow, which is a neighborhood, and it is called out in this map. It's between. Very close to the station here, but it is between Harrison and Ripley, north of 9th Street. So Goose Hollow there's a park called Goose Hollow, and it is the neighborhood above that. At that time, there were houses in along above on the north side of 9th Street as well. But and you see there they talk about that particular area. The whole area around it is yellow, but they call out in the description, particularly this area, and talk about, and the language they use is not language you would use today. They use the C word, and they talk about this population and how it's not it's terms of it's not a bad population, but because this population is here, no loans will be given in this area, and they call that area out. The whole area is yellow around it, but they call that out and say no loans here.
No loans there. Thanks.
No loans here, and they speak specifically, and they talk about the diverse population.
So, in the redlining areas and even possibly the yellow areas, day-to-day impacts on families living in those areas. What do you?
Well, back in that time, what you would have is you would not be able to get a mortgage for your house, or you would get a smaller mortgage, or maybe no mortgage. And so it becomes very difficult first of all, if you're trying to buy into an area and you need a mortgage to buy a house, if an area has been redlined, and if the redlined areas, we're not doing mortgages here. This is not going to happen here. And so you would not be able to buy a house. So what's that? That's going to push you out somewhere else. It's going to push you into another part of the city. And so that area is going to deteriorate. You're not going to be able to get a mortgage to fix things, or to do repairs. And so you have a situation where houses sit empty and they become more deteriorated, and there is an investment to fix them up. But if that's all that's available to you, then that may be where you need to be, that may be where you end up having to live.
Exactly.
In a house that you can't even get the money to fix up. So
how did redlining, start wrapping up a little bit, but how did redlining affect generational wealth and property values over time?
Well, if you're in a house that you can't get a mortgage for, that you can't get money to fix up, and it deteriorates when you pass on or move away, or not going to be in that neighborhood, the house is going to sit there and deteriorate, and you're not going to be able to sell it. So maybe the neighbor buys it, maybe they split it into apartments, and they're there, and the apartments are okay, for a while, but then the neighbor decides they're going to move away, or they pass away, and somebody buys, their house and splits it up. So what you start to get is a sort of a disinvested neighborhood. You get absentee ownership in neighborhoods, people, buying properties, and they just want to make a buck, and they don't really care about the neighborhood. And so you start to lose that sense of place that our older neighborhoods had back in the day.
From your perspective, because historian, you look at this, what still needs to be done to close the housing and wealth gap?
Well, I think things like our urban homestead, the Davenport's done an urban homestead program for years, and that certainly it reinvests in these neighborhoods, specifically refreshing, refurbishing, sometimes building new. It is an income-based program, but I think encouraging others to do that as well, to get into the business of trying to, because tearing houses down doesn't really get you very much. They sit with vacant lots with grass growing in them. So that strategy hasn't worked very well. The DREAM program in Davenport is something that people talk about. Was mostly focused south of Locust. We're going to be adding now a section to the north, which is good and important for that neighborhood. But those kind of programs are really important, and people moving back in, becoming a part of a community, becoming an active neighbor when they move in, becoming an active neighbor of a community, helping to organize a neighborhood, a good neighborhood association, which we don't have as many of probably as we did, back in the day. But these are the kinds of things that help to build neighborhoods again, that help to build a sense of place. So those are things that individuals can do.
Okay.
So is the Good Neighbor Project in Davenport. The city will, if a group of people want to establish themselves as a good neighbor area, they can do that. But it really goes down to the neighbors organizing themselves. A city can't come and say, we're going to organize you. It doesn't work. It has to come grassroots out of people saying, this is where we live. This is where we invested. This is where we stand. This is what we support. This is what we'll stand up for.
All right.
And that you cannot buy that. And that's the most important thing.
Well, Marion, thank you. I enjoyed all this information. A lot of information out there to research, but you shared a lot with us today. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Next, Jasmine Butler spoke with first-time homebuyer and real estate investor Donald Hinton about why it's important to invest in neighborhoods.
Donald, thank you so much for joining me for this real conversation. And just for our viewers, so you're a first-time home buyer and a real estate investor.
That's it.
That's amazing. So share us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to get into real estate investing.
So I got a crazy background. So I was born in a small town in Alton, Illinois, and I grew up without my dad, and I ended up going to prison for, drugs and guns and things like that. Mm-hmm. And while I was in prison, I had this life-changing event that changed everything for me. It was when my son came to visit me in the exact prison that I visited my dad at. Mm-hmm. So that was like the turning point in my life where, I had to figure out something.
Yeah.
And I was already a hustler by nature. So I ended up saving all of my money from selling cakes and honey buns and sodas and stuff. So I had like $10,000. And when I got out of prison, I came to the Quad Cities and asked the first person I knew if he had a building for sale, and he ended up selling me a duplex. So I lived in one, and my tenant paid the mortgage, basically paid most of the mortgage. So it was the same concept, just a different product. Just getting paid every month,
mm-hmm.
But mm-hmm. that's what really started my journey, just being in the streets and hustling. So it was a house was just the same. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I love how you changed that concept up, but I also like how you put a stop to generational behaviors and really making a change and set an example for your son. So kudos to you for that, and congratulations on everything. So you are actually an author too. So from prisons to properties, what was the turning point that led you to purchase real estate?
Okay, so real estate is like the thing. 90% of millionaires own real estate. Mm-hmm. So why do they own real estate? That's the question. Like, do they know something that we don't know? So that's really why. Like, I'm just gonna do what the rich people do, and if it work, it work. If it don't, it don't. But that was just like my concept, like just getting to real estate. So I started learning more about it, and then just seeing all the benefits of owning real estate. So. I actually wrote a book about it. Like, it's called From Prison to Properties. And I wrote a book because some people just don't know how easy it is. Mm-hmm. People think you need a whole lot of money, you need all of this education and stuff like that. But that couldn't be farther from the truth, because if you had to educate, like if you had a whole pile of money, but you didn't know nothing about houses, what would you do with the money? So that's what my mission is to teach these guys that anybody could do it.
Mm-hmm. And where can people purchase your book at?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay, cool. From prisons to properties.
From prison to properties.
Okay. Yep. So how does your personal experience shape your understanding of wealth, home ownership, and community investment?
If you don't own nothing, like you can't pass nothing to your kids. The Bible say that a good man leaves an inheritance to his kids. So an inheritance is houses and gold and riches and things like that. So that's like the foundation of why I do it, So it's just I'm passionate about it, because if you own your community, it's just like, I grew up in the projects where people would be like, this my hood, but you don't own nothing.
Right.
So if you literally own your hood, like I literally own houses on like 2 different streets. Like, this is literally my hood.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how you kind of had like your old theory, your old philosophy of when you were, out in the streets and changed it and make it something that's better and good for the community. I love it. I'm all about it.
That's what's up.
Yes, I love it. So why did you choose Davenport's Third Ward for your investments, this area here?
Okay, so that was just a fluke. If I just met my landlord and he was like, I got a property. So that's where it ended up being in the Third Ward. So it wasn't like I chose like exactly the Third Ward, but I think that's just fate, So that's how I got here in this area.
It's been working.
Yeah.
What did you see as the biggest opportunity and challenges when investing in neighborhoods historically affected by redlining?
Redlining affected communities because it was like nobody wanted to invest there, right? I mean, the people that was there, Black people, they could only do so much. So they couldn't fix up a old house like this because they didn't have the capital. They didn't have the income coming in to do things like that. So when you get these old houses that was affected by redlining, it's like problems like for instance, here is a foundation issue, so you're going to find problems like that in these older areas that was affected by redlining.
So how do you balance profitability with your mission of creating affordable housing?
It's hard. It's hard because in certain cases, you're not gonna make profits. Landlordship is not for everybody. It's you gonna make the profit on the back end. So whenever I get ready to sell, that's when I'll see my profits. So basically, like just helping these people for it to be affordable. Like things like Section 8 and all of this stuff that helps. But as far as profitability, it's really on the back end.
So in your view, how has redlining affected neighborhoods like the Third Ward, and what changes are still needed today?
Education is the thing that we need. Redlining, it affected our parents' so it's affecting us now because they couldn't pass nothing on. They couldn't go to the good neighborhoods and then pass on one of those good houses. So they had to, and then they was redlining. They wasn't investing in the bad neighborhoods. So it was like, it's affecting us now because like, these are the things that we get passed down, like houses that's worth nothing basically. And, that's how it affected us, for generations.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to first-time home buyers who want to invest in communities that have historically been under-resourced?
Do your due diligence, do your homework, learn about it because it like I just seen somebody say like home ownership is a scam. But I don't feel that way because if you're looking at home ownership as this is where I'm going to live, now you still got to go to work to pay for this thing. And then whenever pipes bust and things like that happen, now it's like, man, I'm just spending all my money on this house. But if you look at it as an investment, like putting tenants in there, making money off of the houses, then you can get way farther ahead. So first-time homeowners, I'll always tell them just find a duplex or threeplex or something like that because you can get an FHA loan with little to no money down and make money off of the property as opposed to going to work every day but doing things you don't want to do, talking to people you don't like, and having to pay for this investment. So.
Yeah, and then also I love with your story how you lived on the other side. So you're living, and then making money on the other side is genius.
Yeah. And it's like it's the easiest thing in the world to do, but people just don't even think about that,
No.
So
that's why we have you to educate.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. That's what I'm here for.
How can real estate investing be a tool not just for personal wealth, but for community building and closing racial and economic gaps in housing?
Hey, because it's like you can finally look out for your people, you know. So some people not gonna look out for you just because it's you. And like whenever you got people to help you, like that look like you, talk like you, act like you, then it's like more help, you know. So if we come together and help each other, then you know it could be a beautiful thing.
It can. It can. I love that. What lessons would you like to share with young people or others looking to create wealth through real estate?
Start. Just jump out there. Start. Don't be scared. Just start. If you lose it all and you young, if you lose it all, you can get it back before you 30 or 40. But if you 50, you can't lose. You can't lose it all. So you got to at least start. Know what to do, what not to do, and just learn. Just keep going.
How do you stay motivated when the work feels challenging or slow moving?
I think about that future. I think about what's about to come. So everything is not always perfect, and it never will be. But if you're looking at the future, the outcome, what you're trying to achieve, and your goals and stuff, then that's what keep me going. Just looking at it, like seeing my kids about to have these things, and they understanding this stuff.
Yeah.
Like so that's big, like the future.
I love kind of teaching and training the young. I love that. Are there any resources, mentors, or strategies that were particularly helpful to you in getting started?
Talking to different people, going outside of your comfort zone. African taught me about real estate. African banker taught me about real estate. So it's like you never know who you're talking to and who can help you. So if YouTube University is the biggest thing you can do. Like just go on there. It's free. Pay somebody. If you pay somebody for education, you're gonna do the thing. Like I charge people for educating them how to buy a property and things like that. So when I teach them, they're gonna, execute, as opposed to just going on YouTube for free and wasting time, and then you're not gonna execute. So utilize just free resources and pay for a mentor.
So for our viewers who are interested in learning more about your story or your educational things that you have going on as well, how can they learn more?
Just follow me on all platforms. I teach it for free. I give you all the game for free. If you want one-on-one time, then reach out to me and we can start something.
Donald, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today. I look forward to seeing how your properties continue to prosper in our communities.
Okay, thank you.
As for me, I had an informative conversation with Teresa Jones, Paul Pierre, and Ashawn Thomas about how they're working together to make sure people can be put into homes, why it's important to approve loans to put people in houses, and the importance of creating generational wealth. So welcome, Teresa, Ashawn, and Paul. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Real Conversations as we discuss redlining to today, housing and wealth in our neighborhoods. So first off, with you all being representatives of the Loan Depot, we're talking about how you all are working together to make sure that people can be put into homes, why it's important to approve loans to put people in houses, and of course, the topic of creating generational wealth. First off, just tell me, what is the Loan Depot?
So basically, I'm Loan Depot. Ashawn and Paul are real estate agents in the community. And Loan Depot is a mortgage lender that allows people to purchase or finance their houses. We are non-bank, meaning that we don't have any depository institutions, and we only offer mortgages, but gives the people a wider variety of options. We offer FHA, VA, conventional, DSCR, it's just 203K. So we have a wide variety of loan products.
Are there any misconceptions that people may have when it comes to either getting or receiving a loan? And what truth would you want to just put out there?
That it's easier than you think. And
When you're working with Loan Depot.
all right.
Yeah.
And that you don't, I think there are a lot of misconceptions. People think that they have to have perfect credit.
Yeah.
They think that they have to have a large down payment, which is not accurate either. There's a lot of down payment assistance programs.
Yes, and I'm going to jump right in
ahead,
on
jump
that.
in.
Because the thing is, we do a lot of transactions with Loan Depot. Like you said, me and Paul are licensed agents. And just yesterday, right? Just yesterday, we had a closing, and the young lady came to closing under $200. I'll say it again, under $200, right? So you don't hear that every day, and so that's amazing when the creative financing that she does, and I don't know what she's doing back there. She's like the wizard. She's back there working magic. So very close partner, and yeah, it's a very big misconception about purchasing or down payments and stuff. But when you got the right people with you, or you're more educated on the process, we kind of get you right through that.
Now, how did the subprime mortgage crisis disproportionately affect Black homeowners in particular in this community that we're in? And what lasting effects do you think are still visible today?
So, I actually got my license in 2008. So I've been licensed for almost 18 years. And I was none the wiser when the market crashed. And if I had known that, that probably would have deterred me from getting my license, but I still did close to 3 million that year. In this community, those numbers are kind of hard to pinpoint. But the whole community as a whole kind of suffered from that. But it also opened up a whole new lane for investors to kind of take advantage of those foreclosures. Yeah.
In the good way, in a sense.
In a good way. And another thing is that when that did happen, the rules changed, made it virtually almost impossible to shun away anyone, even if they're from a disenfranchised community. When that happened, it was almost one of the best things that could happen, because now you look and it's just numbers, and that gets people approvals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so what are the primary systemic barriers you would say that prevent families from purchasing homes today, such as disparities in income, lending practices, and of course, and access to good credit?
I would say the biggest disparity, in my opinion, is education.
Education.
Man, that's the first thing I was gonna say. Like, as soon as that question come up, is because when you have that in your brain, or you're thinking there's gonna be roadblocks, you need to come to the professional with your situation, because every person differs. So if you speak it to your cousin or somebody else that told you, or a friend at work, their situation or where they're at in life or what their experience was will not be the same for you, because you have your own things going on. So don't just go off the notion. Yeah.
It's a unique profile for everybody.
And I would say with all of us, when people come to us like that, we bring them on to, I call her Mama T. This is my Mama T right here. So we bring her on in to Mama T, and then she, gets back there and she figures it out for that individual. So that's the biggest thing, just learning about what you got going on, and then how you can get from A to keys.
Because the past is the past, right? And, obviously no one's turning a blind eye to the setbacks that, a certain class of people had. And it would be hard to catch up. It really would be. But in this day and age, with all the information that's available, and, people that actually may look like you are in that profession, just makes it a whole lot easier to get the right information and to obtain a mortgage.
Now, can you describe the role of generational wealth, or lack thereof, in closing or widening the racial homeownership gap?
We all know, well, if we don't know, one of the lowest barrier of entries for future wealth is purchasing a property. I just don't think it's stressed enough. I think people have their priorities in different places. But to shorten the wealth gap between let's just use for example, whites and blacks to shorten that wealth gap. I think it would take more than just owning property. It's just too big. 40% of blacks own home versus 70% of whites, right? And we know there's more than just black people and white people in America. I could see, especially in our community, I could see Africans or Afghanistans or the Burmese even passing up some of the African Americans or the blacks in our community. These are people who are first generation in America.
Yeah.
They're purchasing homes, right?
Yeah.
Right? So for, certain communities that have been here for 3, 4, 5 generations, and no one in that community owns property, it's a little, I think it's an education thing. I mean, even me, I'm first generation island. My mom is from Mississippi, born and raised. She came up here with everyone else in the 70s and 60s. My dad is from Haiti. And I think my mom didn't buy her first house until she was well off into her 40s.
So we kind of already touched on this a little bit earlier, but we'll just get a little more into it. So how have residents' experiences, specifically for you all in the housing search process, differed based on race? For example, that lack or access in general of information or dealing with other realtors before they get to you all?
Good question. Me and Teresa talk about certain things sometimes. A couple years ago, the market was just on fire. Multiple offers coming in on properties, and some of the offers that some of Teresa's realtors were putting in for the clients, they were really good offers. No inspections, 5 figures over list price, and they still weren't getting the property.
Beat out.
And after a while, they started to ask questions like, well, do you think it's because, I'm a foreigner, because of my name? So that kind of, put a light bulb over Teresa's head and was like, what if the mortgage industry,
Gave an approval,
but then it was a number instead of a name. That would, a lot of our clients were feeling like, well, maybe they don't want a foreigner in this neighborhood, but this, you just can't prove that.
Right, of course. Interesting. Yeah. Any other experiences? Anything else?
well, I think that was a major
That
one
is.
because
I mean, you can like any, no matter the industry or the name associated with something. If it sounds too much like something,
and I was constantly running numbers, rerunning numbers, running numbers 10,000 over, 20,000 over, and then it does become concerning when that person has A+ credit, has a lot of money to put down, loan commitment. Even I've already taken it before an underwriter and they would get beat out. And so you start to wonder, it's like, okay, why are these individuals, certain individuals, and then they start thinking it's the real estate agent that is not presenting it, or and so, and again, you can't prove it, but I was saying, what if the purchase agreement had not a name on it, could have the seller's name on it, but not the buyer's name, and you had a number tied to that person's identity, then it would just be data. And that
would take out that
element.
That element.
I don't want this person living in my, and we know that happens. I don't want this person living in my house, or what would my neighbors say? When I was a real estate agent, I actually had a person say, I had sent a person who was a African American. He's actually a really big builder now. And the neighbor couldn't tell by my voice over the phone what nationality I was. She said to me, what if my neighbors think if an African American moved next door? And I was floored. So what my broker did was not send me out there, but sent another affiliate of a real estate agent to get the listing, because it was based on her perception of what we were and how it would affect her neighborhood. So does that occur? Absolutely. Can we track it? Not really, but that would level that playing field if it was just a number.
Okay, so what is the importance of generational wealth to each of you? What do you think it is, no matter the group associated with such or anything like that? Just what is the importance of creating generational wealth?
All right. I'll go first, and I'm gonna take it on more of a personal note. With my father, he owned a duplex, and he kind of had that as pretty much his whole life. So I seen him renting or doing those type of things. So it kind of sparked it a little bit. And then now with me holding properties, or I got a couple investment properties, I think it wasn't a monetary thing that he gave me, or it was just money that was given, but it was more of a mental thing. And I plan on doing the same for my children, but on another level. So generational wealth doesn't have to specifically be the dollars, or we pass them all the assets. But I think what I was given was a very good generational wealth mindset, you know? And with working with younger buyers now, I see it so much more. Like, buyers are buying in their 20s, you know, like early 30s and stuff like that. So I see the future being really well for that. It's just again, I don't know how many times you say education, but even with me, I saw him doing that, but I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. So more that I know and I'm passing that on, or like even with that, I'll be speaking at the Rock Island High School here later on this month. And those classes be filled with realtors. They always want to know about realtors or owning properties and stuff like that. So I think it's going in the right direction, me personally.
So with me, I, of course, was exposed to it. I'm a lot older than them, by the way. So I was exposed to it early. And so what I told my children, so that they didn't make the same mistake I did, when my son graduated from college, his friends were renting, you know, really expensive apartments, are really expensive if you get a decent one, right? And I said, well, you're not going to rent apartments. You're going to go find a house and you can get a roommate. And he listened to me. He bought a property. He got a roommate. Roommate just moved out, I think early part of last year. And he also purchased an Airbnb. So he is accumulating wealth that he can leave to his child. And also, not only real estate, but there's so many different facets of real estate. You can own it and rent it. You can own it and live rent free and build your portfolio. You can purchase the lien or the note on the property. I just learned about this from my cousin recently, that you can own the note. Like the bank owns the note, you can actually own a note. It's very interesting, and it's a very lucrative business. So there's different parts of real estate, and that's how you leave a legacy. So you expose them to more than one thing, maybe owning a group home. That's one of the bigger things, or cohabitating now, because some people can't afford the rent. You may have your house and you can cohabitate. Maybe you're renting out rooms. It's just so many things that you can do that will also help you develop a portfolio and lead generational wealth. But again, that all goes back to education. Let them know what's out there. Take them with you when you're, I don't know if you guys take your kids with you, but
all the time.
I used to make my kids go through the parade of homes. They hated it, but they go now, but they also understood what type of homes and properties were out there. They weren't just exposed to their limited location. Yeah. So it's again, that's education.
Yeah, I got to piggyback on both of what they said. It does boil down to education. Generational wealth to me is really just a quality of life. I think a lot of people go from wanting to earn all the way to invest, and they miss a very important part in there, which is store and save. So I think, the more education you can get, the more resources, what I mean by resources, people around you that can hold your hand, I think you could start to think about generational wealth. But jumping from A and having your mind on Z when there's so much to learn in between, that in between is crucial. It's super crucial.
Absolutely. And then just finally, what would you, for people who want to know more information about the Loan Depot, where should they go?
Here, I am located at 119th Street in Rock Island. I'm downtown in McKesson Lofts. Or they can find me online at www.loandepot.com/TH Jones.
All my social media is Paul Richard Pierre, Instagram or either Facebook. Yeah.
A. Sean Thomas, licensed realtor here, Iowa and Illinois side. You can Instagram ashawn.thomas, Facebook Ashawn Thomas the realtor, or hashtag ask me about real estate. And if you want to email, info at ashawn, ASHAUN, therealtor.com. I'm accepting all emails, phone calls, text messages, and DMs.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Great
Very
voice.
important conversation.
Man, thank you so
gotta
much
do this
for having
again.
us sit down. Yeah, most definitely.
Teresa Bryant spoke to Leslie Kilgannon with the Quad Cities Housing Council regarding the lack of affordable housing, what they're trying to do to help solve that issue, renting as a student of color, and gentrification.
Leslie Kilgannon, you are the executive director of the Quad City Housing Council. Welcome. Thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
You know, when people think of housing, they think of just a place to live, but it's more than that for a lot of people. Explain what it is the organization does.
Sure. And you're so right. Housing is the foundation of a thriving community, no pun intended. It is where people gather to be together with family. If there is an issue with your housing stability, if you struggle to maintain housing that's safe, decent, and affordable, everything is impacted by that. Your education, your health, your job. So it's a foundational issue. And the Quad Cities Housing Council is, among other things, the local housing trust fund. We fund agencies that maintain or create affordable housing, everything from shelter to affordable homeownership. And we also advocate for more funding for housing, but also different types of housing based on the needs in our community. And we fund agencies, but we are also funded by many wonderful organizations around here who want to see more of an investment in stabilizing people who are experiencing housing instability or homelessness.
So what are the main factors that make housing unavailable for some folks? Is it just the availability of homes or apartments? Is it the cost? Is it location? Is it a safety factor? All of those things?
Pretty much all of the above and more. I would say consistently for the last 40 years in the United States, the issues around housing affordability have been lack of quality housing stock. We simply don't have enough housing that's safe, decent, and affordable for everyone at every income level. Not surprisingly, especially people at the extremely low income categories. So it's housing stock. It's people being cost burdened. In other words, they're paying 30% or more of their income on their housing. So, and wages have not kept up with the cost of really anything, but in particular housing. Also, we are losing housing stock in the U.S. I don't mean it's disappearing. In some sense it is. Units are going offline. So units are being lost to disrepair, and absentee landlords or absentee owners not maintaining properties, letting them go beyond the point of being able to habitate them. Sorry. So you've kind of got the perfect storm. You've got, and then you mixed in the pandemic. So our community, our country did a pretty good job in stabilizing people during the pandemic. We helped people with rental assistance. There was an eviction moratorium nationwide. So people, because it was a health issue, people needed to stay where they were, right? There were supports, but now those kinds of things have gone away. In addition, lots of out-of-town corporations are buying up housing stock.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. A lot of people with Airbnbs and that sort of thing
going offline.
are going offline.
Right.
So that's not a permanent housing choice.
That's right.
for
That's
them.
one more unit lost to someone who's looking to purchase or rent. Interest rates have gone up. A lot of landlords left the rental business during the pandemic. In this community, 1 in 4 landlords stopped renting.
Really?
And they've really not come back online. So, as I said, it's kind of a perfect storm in a horrible way. And the consequences is we're just seeing an increase in homelessness and housing instability, not just in the Quad Cities, but nationwide.
What do you think can be done to address this loss of housing or the amount of housing that we have, especially here in the Quad Cities area?
Sure. Well, organizations that work with the Housing Council have been and are doing many things to bring units back online. Of course, there's always new construction, market rate, and affordable housing, but new units doesn't have to be about new construction. Bringing them back online, rehabbing them, preserving units before they go and are too expensive to rehabilitate. So working with local municipalities, agencies, and organizations are trying to get a unit that's been standing vacant for months, if not years, and access them more quickly so that they can rehabilitate those units and bring them back online for typically rental. It's not just about units. We need more resources dedicated to keeping people in their housing. There's an expression called housing instability, and housing instability is when you don't know where you're going to sleep next week, tomorrow, next month. So it's not just unaffordability, it's not just homelessness, it's also this instability. So we need resources that help stabilize people. It is far less expensive to keep someone in their home, their rental unit, whatever the situation is, than it is to extricate them from homelessness. So the investment is really about getting resources to stabilize someone while they still have a place to live.
All right, here's an interesting question for you. And I think I asked this to you before off camera. Why isn't housing a right?
Why isn't it? It should be. I consider it a right. I feel strongly that not only is housing a right, it's a moral imperative. Every person deserves to have somewhere that's safe, decent, and affordable. It's not a luxury, it's a right. And I think it's smart. It's just makes good financial sense. It's good for the community. If you have a permanent underclass of people who cannot afford to live where they are, that's a problem for everyone. That really, and it doesn't leave the community. It doesn't leave that. It leaves that family. It's moving all throughout the community. Problems with education, problems in healthcare, problems with police potentially. Like poverty and affordable housing go hand in hand. If people who are already experiencing poverty and experiencing systemic barriers can't find housing, we're really compounding the issue, not just for those individuals, but for the entire community.
There was another thing I wanted to talk to you about, the number of schools in this community, universities and colleges means that there are a lot of students coming in to the community, especially at the end of summer. And that also brings down the number, I guess, of available housing units because there's students trying to get in as well.
It can, just as interest rates are kind of putting a damper on home ownership. When there's little supply, the rents go up, there's fewer choices. And of course, people at the lowest end of the financial, the income spectrum are the people who have the fewest choices. That's always the way it is. And we're just seeing more and more of that. Homelessness is increasing in the United States. It went up 18% between 2023 and 2024. So, and you're seeing first-time homelessness, family homelessness, things like that. But there are bright spots all over the country. Communities have really achieved functional zero for veterans housing. The point in time count that was released by the federal government earlier this year shows that once again, for the 6th or 7th year in a row, veterans homelessness went down. So it's almost as if we set a goal and all work together. We can move the needle, and that's what we need to do more broadly. You've seen a lot of targeted programs across the country towards veterans or other populations, but we really need to take a look more broadly and address this the need for housing for a broader swath of Americans, particularly African American Americans and Native Americans. Indigenous communities in the United States have one of the highest rates of homelessness and housing instability. So these legacies, these systemic barriers that we have had because of racism in the United States are, you're feeling the impact still today.
And I was just going to ask you about that because communities of color are among some of the hardest hit when it comes to housing. And there are some people who think that is not necessarily the problem anymore. Tell me what you think about that.
It is absolutely a problem. As I said, there's policies that were outlawed 40 and 50 years ago that are still impacting communities of color today. You have a legacy of 200 some odd years, a legacy of entrenched systemic racism against African Americans. You're not going to snap your fingers and say, oh, it's all over and everybody's starting from the same point. Oftentimes African American workers are paid less, just as women, Latinos are, right, than other people in our society. Okay, well, but everybody's going to rent the same $850 unit. Okay, so the person who's making more money obviously is not as cost burdened. So even things as much as your income, and if we're having a permanent status where people of color, Black communities are not being paid the same, that's going to impact your housing, that's going to impact your all sorts of opportunities. So I know the state of Illinois, I think it was a university study just released last year, talked about just the incredibly high numbers of homelessness amongst Black Americans. And it's shocking and not shocking. It's sort of, yes, well, that is kind of not surprising given the systemic discrimination and these legacies of that. But it's, I just think these numbers are unacceptable. There shouldn't be that many people, Black or white or whomever, who are experiencing that level of homelessness. I believe Black Americans in the United States are 2.5 times more likely to be homeless than white Americans, and I may be underselling that. It's a stark contrast.
One last question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think the American dream of home ownership is dead?
I don't think it's dead.
Do you think it's on life support?
I think it's not doing great. It probably, I don't think older generations understand that the cost of things have just become so impossible for younger potential home buyers. I think there's just, it's not even back in the day. It's just, there were other mechanisms. Your money went further. Things were less expensive 25 years ago. I was 28 when I bought my house. Now the average age of a first-time home buyer in the United States is 39. It's gone up a decade. So that's quite a difference. Like, what is going on there? It's not just interest rates. It's the ability to make a down payment. It's the ability to have that cushion when inevitably, as all homeowners know, something goes wrong and you need a new roof or water heater or what have you. People just do not have that kind of money, especially young people.
All right. Leslie Kilgannon, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this episode of Real Conversations, brought to you in partnership with TNBC at the Lincoln Center. Please note that for the month of November and December, the episodes aired will be reruns. But don't worry, we aren't going anywhere. Real Conversations in the QC is being restructured, and we look forward to bringing you new and improved episodes in 2026.
Real Conversations in the QC is sponsored by Accentra Credit Union.